Hey everyone, I'm Annie Thompson, and you're watching the U.S. Crime Line. Today's story begins in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the lawns are trimmed, the cars are polished, and nothing ever seems out of place. It's the kind of place where neighbors wave politely, where kids ride bikes in the evenings, and where people believe they know one another. In communities like this, disappearances don't just happen. People don't simply vanish without someone noticing. And yet, one winter, a successful businesswoman walked out of her home and was never seen alive again. Her name was Tara Grant. Tara was driven, intelligent, and deeply focused on building her career. She worked in the corporate world, traveling frequently for business, including regular trips to Puerto Rico. Colleagues described her as organized and determined, someone who set goals and reached them. She balanced conference calls with school schedules, presentations with parent-teacher meetings. From the outside, she seemed to embody the modern success story, professional achievement paired with family life. At home in the Detroit area, her husband, Stephen Grant, managed the day-to-day routine with their two young children. He coached soccer. He ran errands. He kept the household moving while Tara traveled. On the surface, it appeared to be an arrangement that worked. But appearances can be deceiving. Friends would later say that beneath the polished exterior of their life together, tensions had been building for some time. Stephen struggled with Tara's success. In social settings, people noticed how different they seemed. Tara was confident and assertive. Stephen often came across as awkward and withdrawn. Some described him as insecure, especially about the fact that his wife was the primary earner in the household. Over time, that insecurity seemed to deepen. While Tara focused on advancing her career, Stephen reportedly reconnected with an old girlfriend. Investigators would later uncover evidence of flirtatious conversations and emotional intimacy that crossed boundaries. Even more concerning were reports that he developed an inappropriate closeness with the couple's 18-year-old nanny. What may have begun as attention-seeking behavior evolved into something far more troubling. Jealousy simmered, resentment took root, and inside that carefully maintained home, arguments became more frequent. Then came a cold February night that would change everything. According to Stephen, he and Tara had a heated argument. Voices were raised, accusations flew. At some point, Tara allegedly told him she was leaving for Puerto Rico for work. Stephen later claimed she packed a bag and walked out. But there was one problem with that story. She never made it to Puerto Rico. Days passed, and Tara didn't show up for work. There were no flight records in her name, no airport sightings, no boarding passes scanned. Her credit cards weren't used. Her phone activity abruptly stopped. Stephen began calling family members, telling them he couldn't reach her. He contacted her employer, saying he was worried. To some, he seemed like a concerned husband desperately searching for answers. But when detectives arrived at the Grant home to conduct a welfare check, they sensed something wasn't right. Stephen appeared nervous. He fidgeted. He spoke quickly. At times, he seemed overly cooperative, volunteering details before being asked. Investigators are trained to notice subtle behavioral cues, and in this case, those cues raised red flags. As detectives began verifying Stephen's timeline, inconsistencies surfaced. Surveillance footage and phone records did not support his account. There was no evidence Tara had taken the trip he described, no trace of her leaving the state. Then the case took a grim turn. A passerby walking through a nearby park made a disturbing discovery. Hidden inside a tree was a bag. Inside that bag were items stained with blood. Testing would later confirm the blood belonged to Tara. Investigators returned to the Grant residence with renewed urgency. They searched the property thoroughly, focusing on the garage area. There, they found a plastic storage bin. What was inside would shock even seasoned detectives, part of Tara's remains. The reality was horrifying. Confronted with mounting evidence, Stephen eventually confessed. He claimed that during the argument, things turned physical. He said he placed Tara in a chokehold. According to him, he didn't intend to kill her, but when he released her, she wasn't breathing. Instead of calling for help, Instead of dialing 911, he made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He dismembered her body in the garage. Investigators later described his demeanor during the confession as eerily calm. There was no visible breakdown, no dramatic display of remorse. At times, he even appeared detached, as though recounting events that had happened to someone else. The brutality of what followed the argument stunned the community. Neighbors who once waved at the family now struggled to reconcile the image of a soccer coach and father with the crime investigators had uncovered. As pressure mounted and police prepared to arrest him, Stephen fled. He disappeared for several days, triggering a manhunt. Authorities warned the public that he could be armed and dangerous. Search teams combed wooded areas and parks, tracking tips and sightings. Eventually, he was found in a forested park, suffering from hypothermia. He was taken into custody without further incident. The legal process moved forward, and 9 months later, Stephen Grant was convicted of second-degree murder and mutilation of a corpse. The court sentenced him to 50 to 80 years in prison. But the sentence could not repair what had been broken. 2 children were left without their mother. Their lives, once structured around school schedules and family dinners, were now defined by loss. Tara's sister stepped in to raise them, determined to keep her memory alive. Each year, the family organizes a memorial walk to honor Tara and to raise funds for domestic violence awareness programs, hoping that some good might emerge from unimaginable tragedy. This case forced many people to confront uncomfortable truths. Domestic violence does not always look the way we expect. It doesn't always begin with visible bruises or public scenes. Sometimes it grows quietly, fueled by insecurity, jealousy, and control. Sometimes it hides behind the facade of a perfect home, and sometimes by the time the truth comes out, it's too late. But our coverage today doesn't end there. In another part of the country, a young woman experienced a nightmare that serves as a warning for anyone who relies on ride-sharing services. Carla Westland had been out for the evening in Hollywood. It was a normal night. Friends, conversation, a little laughter. When it was time to go home, she did what millions of people do every day. She ordered a ride. But in a moment of exhaustion and distraction, she got into the wrong car. The vehicle resembled the one she expected. The driver appeared to be waiting. In the dim light, the mistake was easy to make. She fell asleep shortly after getting in. When she woke up, everything had changed. The man behind the wheel was not her rideshare driver. He was an imposter. What followed was hours of terror. Carla later described the attack as calculated and predatory. Trapped inside a moving vehicle, isolated and vulnerable, she faced a situation no one ever imagines when requesting a simple ride home. Yet, even in that terrifying moment, Carla made a strategic decision. She resisted the urge to panic outwardly. She spoke calmly. She shared details about her life. She tried to humanize herself in the eyes of her attacker, hoping it would reduce the violence and buy her time. It was a survival instinct that may have saved her life. Eventually, the attacker released her near her boyfriend's home. Before letting her go, he attempted to prevent her from identifying him, but he underestimated her resolve. Instead of retreating into silence, Carla reported the crime. She worked closely with law enforcement and even hired a private investigator. Together, they created a composite sketch of the suspect. She chose to speak publicly about her experience, not because it was easy, but because she wanted other victims to know they are not alone. Her courage transformed her from a victim into a powerful voice for awareness. Both of these cases, though very different, highlight a sobering reality. Danger does not always announce itself. It can exist inside a marriage that looks stable. It can sit behind the wheel of a car that appears legitimate. Trusting your instincts, verifying details, and recognizing warning signs can make a difference. If you or someone you know is facing domestic violence or sexual assault, there are organizations ready to help. Reaching out can feel overwhelming, but support exists, and speaking up can be the first step towards safety. Today's stories are painful. They are difficult to hear, but they matter, because awareness matters. because prevention matters, and because every victim deserves to be remembered, not just for the tragedy they endured, but for the life they lived. I'm Annie Thompson, and this has been the U.S. Crime Line. Stay safe, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next episode.